Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree. Today, I'm giving you the list, the definitive list, you can take it to the bank, top 25 horror franchises of all time. And we have to start all the way at the bottom with number 25. Not the greatest horror franchise of all time, not the worst thing you're going to subject yourself to. It's the Hatchet franchise. 3 films, Hatchet, Hatchet 2, Hatchet 3, and then the 4th, Victor Crowley. Alright. It's a passable slasher franchise. It's good enough. There are 4 degrees of watchable films in the franchise. It gets the job done. But there are better things to watch. There are worse things to watch. Number 24, I almost wanted to bump this up because of my recent experience, because I just watched the 3rd film, because it's playing right now in cinemas, the Terrifier franchise. Now, I am isolating this to the 3 Terrifier films. I am discounting the 2 All Hallows Eve films. They are unrelated. They're not connected to this franchise. That's a separate thing. But the Terrifier franchise is pretty solid now that we have 3 legit good entries in the series. And it's one of those rare horror franchises where they just keep getting better. I know that's not going to last forever, but as of right now, that is the case. Number 23, Phantasm. Now, I have talked at length about my complicated issues I have with the first the first 2 Phantasm films. But overall, there are 5 films in the franchise. As a whole, it's a pretty solid franchise as a whole. Well, each individual entry kind of tries to continue the story. They also kind of ignore the previous and other entries while also referencing them. It's convoluted, but it works for some reason, for the most part. Number 22 is the X/Pearl or Maxine, I guess, trilogy at this point. Great movies. Pearl is by far one of the greatest horror movies I've ever seen in my entire life. I only watched it for the first time 6 months ago, and I've already seen it 12 times. And I'm going to watch it 12 more before the year is over. I love Pearl. Number 21 is an inconsistent franchise, which a lot of these are going to be. It is the Firefly trilogy. Specifically, the first 2. House of a Thousand Corpses, one of the best Texas Chainsaw Massacre type movies ever. And I forgot what the sequel was called. Hillbilly Deluxe or something like that. I can't remember. I forgot the name of the movie, but it's a good movie. It'll come back to me. But those 2 are great. The 3rd one, not so much. Devil's Rejects. There it is. I told you it would come back to me. The Devil's Rejects. Great fucking movie. But because it's only 3 films and only 2 of them are fantastic and the 3rd one is, what the fuck? I can't rank it any higher. Which takes me to number 20, Final Destination, which is another one where each film gets the job it set out to do done, and that's all we can say. Number 20, going up the list. Number 19, Urban Legend. Again, there are only 3 films in this franchise, and again, only the first 2 are amazing. The 3rd one is just, it is what it is. But those first 2 are so amazing that it deserves a spot on the list just because. Number 18 is a bit of a cheat because it's not technically a franchise, but it's also not a franchise. I know. It's Stephen King. I know there's gonna be a lot of people that boo at this point in the video, but I don't care. I lump all of Stephen King together as a single franchise because Stephen King fans are Stephen King fans, and I am a Stephen King fan. And so, yes, if his name is on it, I assume it's going to be a certain thing, and it almost usually always is. Number 17, just a notch above the Stephen King franchise, and I know this is going to be controversial, but the Amityville Horror. Mostly on the merits of the good films, which are surprisingly more than you would realize in a long-running franchise. Yeah, there are some stinkers, just like there are some stinkers in the Stephen King franchise. But they don't have any Amityville movies that are as obnoxiously annoying as Dolores Claiborne. And I'm sorry if you like that movie, but ugh. Moving on. Alright. Number 16, just barely eked out Amityville Horror. And that's mostly on the merits of the first film alone. And it's the Leprechaun franchise. Hey, the dude went to space. You gotta give him props for that. Number 15, speaking of space, this is one of those rare franchises, in that I can honestly say I have thoroughly enjoyed every entry. However, there are only 4 entries in the franchise as of today. And it is the Species franchise. They're all good movies in their own right. But number 14 is just a little bit, whole bunch, a lot more better. A lot. But as much as I love Gremlins, and really enjoy Gremlins 2, I can't rank it any higher because it's only 2 films. And yeah, it's one perfect film and one damn near perfect film. It is only 2 films. Number 13 is Resident Evil. Again, we're playing the numbers here. There's, 6, maybe 7 films in the franchise. 4 are good. The other 2 or 3 are okay. None of them are awful. Number 12 is Saw. Even if they only made the first 3 Saw movies, this would still be at the same spot on the list because the first 3 movies are pure awesome. Everything after is just, okay, alright, good enough. Keep going, whatever. It is what it is. Number 11 is the Alien franchise, and I'm talking about the Xenomorphs, Ridley Scott, James Cameron, etc., etc. Again, largely being carried on the backs of the first 2 films. But there's still some quality films in the franchise above and beyond just those first 2. Not as good as what we're going to find in our top 10. These are the best of the best. Starting with number 10, and I will say this is another one where I don't enjoy every movie in the franchise, because there's one I actively hate, which is the second one. All others I love, like unconditionally. This is the Evil Dead franchise. And just for good measure, I'm going to throw Drag Me to Hell into this franchise. Just so I can say there's only one bad movie in the bunch, and that is Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead, love it. Army of Darkness, love it. The Evil Dead 2013, best in the franchise, fight me in the comments. Evil Dead Rise, pretty goddamn good. And yeah, Drag Me to Hell, dope as fuck. But, number 9, well, again, no individual entry in number 9 is as good as the original Evil Dead or the 2013 requel. But, again, by the numbers, number 9 just barely ekes out Evil Dead because, 1, the historical significance, and 2, the impact it has had on horror is legendary. Number 9 is the Living Dead franchise. We're talking about Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. And I'm going to also include in this franchise the sort of related, unrelated, but also kind of related zombie franchise. And the same thing, related, not related, sort of related, almost related, Return of the Living Dead franchise. Because it's all basically one continuous franchise, even though it has branching timelines. If Halloween can have branching timelines, so can The Living Dead. Get over it. They're pretty much all great movies, though. Number 8 is The Conjuring. Again, very heavily being carried on the back of the first movie, which is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, one of the scariest horror movies of all time, and so far, a pretty solid franchise, even when you take into consideration the spin-offs. Pretty good. However, maybe not as good as number 8, The Conjuring, more entertaining in its own respects. Number 7 is the Chucky franchise, which includes the 3 Child's Play films and the various Something of Chucky franchise. Bride of Chucky, Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, Cult of Chucky, etc., etc. Yeah, Chucky, fuck yeah, give me more. I'll take Chucky all day long. I'm good to go. Give me a Chucky movie. Even a bad Chucky movie is a good horror movie. I'm going to say something controversial about number 6. And the controversial statement I'm going to make is there's not a bad movie in this franchise. There are movies that do better than others and movies that work better than others, but they're all good in their own way. And I'm very obviously, if you couldn't tell by the rest of this list and what comes next, talking about the Scream franchise. Rock solid, 6 entries. I could watch any one of them any day of the week. Others are better than, some are better than others, but they're all good. Number 5, cannot say the same thing because it has some stinkers, but it has more A+ rock solid titles than not, and the ones that are A+ rock solid titles knock it out of the goddamn park. Some of the best of the best of the best horror movies ever made are in this franchise, which is why it's in the top 10. It's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The original, the first sequel, the first remake, a couple of other remakes, the Netflix remakes. There's too many good entries in this franchise for it to not to be on this list. And as much as I love me some Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and as much as I know number 4 has got some stinkers, some scraping the bottom of the barrel stinkers, the first 4 movies are so phenomenally fantastic in the Hellraiser franchise, especially the first 2 movies. Goddamn perfect movies, the both of them. Hellraiser obviously makes the list. Alright, number 3, you know I have issues with number 3. As a franchise, I'll allow it. It works. Individually, there are movies in this franchise that suck fucking donkey dick. There are movies in this franchise that are universally beloved. There are movies in this franchise that are universally hated. And there are controversial movies in this franchise that some people love, some people hate, and everybody's got an opinion. But nobody can deny that the Halloween franchise is one of the most important horror franchises of all time. And Halloween 2, Halloween 4, Curse of Michael Myers, Halloween Resurrection, Halloween Kills, these are all great fucking movies. The rest of them are various degrees of okay to give me a fucking break, but they're all good in their own way. But as a whole, the franchise knocks it out of the fucking park. But y'all know I don't care for Michael Myers as a character. But number 2, come on. Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th. If you don't rank this high on your horror list, I don't know how to talk to you. I don't. You've got some stinkers. You got Jason Goes to Hell. You've got the original Friday the 13th. You've got Part 5. You've got some all-time classics. Friday the 13th 3. Friday the 13th 4. Jason Lives. Freddy vs. Jason. Jason X. You've got some movies that are questionable, but they're still enjoyable. You know, The New Blood. Jason Takes Manhattan, allegedly. But one thing you can say is absolutely certain. every one of them deserves to exist. And every one of them does their own thing, even if they're just doing the same thing over and over again for a while. Which takes us to the number one greatest horror franchise of all time. I don't care what anybody says. A Nightmare on Elm Street is the God's gifts to humanity. All of the gods came together and universally agreed that humans needed Freddy Krueger. And they bestowed upon us his greatness. And we are better as a society, as a species for it. My number one favorite horror movie of all, number one favorite movie of all time is the original 1984 Wes Craven classic, Nightmare on Elm Street. And I love Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. And I love Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. And I love Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child. And I'll watch, very reluctantly, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. And I'll watch, just to spite you, Freddy's Dead. But I also love Freddy vs. Jason. I enjoyed, for what it was, the remake. And alright, I have tremendous animosity towards Wes Craven's New Nightmare. I'll at least give you the fact that it is a well-produced, pretty solid horror movie. It just doesn't belong in my Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But, take that one out, take it or leave it, the franchise as a whole is horror at its peak. You cannot get better than Freddy Krueger as a horror villain. Art, you did good. You just didn't do good enough. I love you, Jason, but you're no Robert Englund. And Michael Myers, oh my God. You got some good movies, but you suck. But Freddy Krueger, in all of his iterations, is the goddamn GOAT. This is not debatable. You can try, but you won't reach me. Stay cool.